Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Saints and Falcons, they'll tangle in the Dome on Sunday. Far cry from what this matchup looked like week one at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Our buddy Mark Zinno joins us now to talk a little bit about the Atlanta Falcons and what we can expect to see Sunday in the Dome. Mark, we appreciate a couple of minutes, man. How are you?
Matt, great. Always great to be with you, man. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's our pleasure. Let's start with the most obvious thing, which is that you're going to have two different starting quarterbacks this go-round than we did back all the way back in week one. What's it looking like there in Atlanta with the quarterback change?
Well, I mean, obviously it's been a long time coming, right? Like Mariota's play was never really all that outstanding. I guess the hard pivot was, when Arthur Smith deemed that Desmond Ridder was finally ready. Either that or he had enough of Mariota's play that he just basically had to go and say, look, we're not doing this any longer. So, I mean, what we do know is that Arthur Smith has been sort of at the end of practice over the last couple of weeks, been throwing a whole bunch of extra crap at Desmond Ridder to try and simulate the environment that he's going to be in against the team that he's going to be playing in. I mean, you want to call it for a playoff spot. Everybody in the NFC South is fighting for a playoff spot to get their butts kicked in the first round. But beyond all that, there's a lot on the line for this young man here. And more importantly for the Falcons, Matty, like here's the thing. They have 4 games to potentially decide a draft strategy for April. What does Desmond Ridder look like? What does he play like? I mean, if he's the guy for the Falcons, right? Arthur Smith is super pumped about what he has. He's got a quarterback under a low salary for the next 3 years and $60 million in cap space to go out there and spend to turn this thing into a contender. I don't know if you should be altering your draft strategy based off of a small sample size like 4 games, but it appears like the Falcons are at that spot right now where that may be the case of what they're doing.
Mark, just for a little housekeeping, how much of the talk there in Atlanta is about making the playoffs?
None.
Okay.
I mean, it's not really a thing, right? I mean, it's a thing, but it's not a thing, right? Like, we all understand that everybody making the playoffs is better than missing the playoffs, but all things considered, it's like if you make the playoffs, you kind of know that you're going to get smoked against the Cowboys or the Vikings or wherever's the 2 seed in the first round, and it's just you get in for the sake of getting in, but in reality, I think more people are looking at, let's see Desmond Ridder play, let's hope he's really good, and we miss the playoffs and get a better draft pick.
I mean, but you'd be a division champion. You get a home game. I mean, it's incredible to think, but,
listen, you don't have to sell me on the concept of it. I mean, I always say, you can make the playoffs, make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Even if you're not supposed to make the playoffs, make the damn playoffs. But, again, Atlanta's a little bit strange in that sense. Their fans are a little bit different.
Let's dig a little deeper into Sunday, then we'll go back to the big picture stuff. Aside from the quarterback difference, what's going to be the biggest difference for this Falcons team that we see on Sunday than what we saw week one in Atlanta?
We know they can't get off the field on third down. That might have been up in the air back in week one, but we know that's the case now. And look, they're still going to be a really good running team. Like, I don't think we knew how good they were going to be in week one. But I got to tell you, man, Arthur Smith's scheme is off the charts good. Like, the Falcons did nothing to upgrade their offensive line, and they were 32nd in the league last year in rushing yards per game. How did they end up top 5? Because Arthur Smith's scheme is really damn good. And so he's one of the smartest coaches I've ever been around. He really is. And if he gets the right pieces on the chessboard, so to speak, I mean, this is a coach right now that I feel like, without being grandiose, has the ability to go win a Super Bowl. Because he just is so much smarter. He's always a step ahead of the guy that he's coaching against.
Stay on the offensive side. So we know Ridder is going to play quarterback. You mentioned the run game. Anything on the outside? Because obviously, look, there's been a lot invested there, and there's been a lot of turnover there as well. How does that matchup look with the Falcons on the outside against those Saints corners?
Well, I mean, Drake London, I think, is as good as advertised. He just hasn't had a legitimate quarterback who can get him the football, right? Like, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. I mean, there's obviously no Kyle Pitts in this matchup, but at the skill positions, the Falcons don't really stack up other than Drake London. So let's just say, for argument's sake, Marshawn Lattimore plays, and he's one-on-one with Drake. That's the neutralizing force right there, and you might take him out, and then it's down to Olamide Zaccheaus and Frank Darby and whoever else you found off the scrap heap to go play wide receiver for the Falcons that you've never heard of. And I don't say that as a pejorative to those guys. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Other than Zaccheaus, there's not really a name that anybody really, would know without doing the research on who the Falcons are and what they do each week. So, again, I think the matchup of the Saints defense versus the Falcons offense, it's obviously edge Saints defense, but Ridder's the ultimate wild card here. I don't think he's going to take off and run that much. My understanding of it, I don't think you're going to see him throw any more just because he may be better at throwing the football than Mariota. In fact, I think you may see him throw less. Arthur Smith is all about risk management, right? Like, he's not going to put this young man in situations and give him many opportunities to make mistakes. And that was kind of the whole reason that they held him out for as long as they did, because they really looked at it and said, well, his ceiling is as high as Mariota's. We're not going to be all that much better with Ridder than we are with Mariota. The problem is his floor is going to be that much lower, because what do rookies do? They force bad throws. They get nervous in the pocket. They don't know when to take a sack. They don't know when to throw it away. And so you're opening yourself up to a lot more mistakes. And I think Arthur Smith is really good at limiting those opportunities for a young quarterback to make mistakes.
A couple more minutes here with Mark Zinno. He's on Twitter at Mark Zinno, 929 The Game there in Atlanta. When I look at Atlanta, there's this point in the season where, of course, they had the disappointing Week 1 loss to the Saints, but after the win against San Francisco, by 2 touchdowns, the Falcons were sitting there at 3-3 and looked like a legitimate threat, not only in the division, but potentially to go on a run. And it's I guess I could say it's fallen apart since then. What has gone wrong from that point where they beat the Niners emphatically to now?
Well, they can't close out games, right? There's only been one game this year they've really been blown out in, and that's the game against Cincinnati. Other than that, the Falcons have been in every game. Even the Panthers game, they lost by 10 points on Thursday night. That was a late Panthers field goal that made it a 10-point game, not a one-score game. But they've been in one-score games every week. And really, that doesn't say – normally you'd say, well, they lose one-score games. That's about coaching. Yeah, it's about coaching when you have talent. The Falcons don't have any talent. That's not a talented roster. It never has been. So despite the fact that they have a subpar roster and they've had below-average quarterback play, they've managed to be competitive this year. And that is the biggest thing the Falcons fans are forgetting and should be focusing on, is that your coach keeps you in games and he keeps you competitive. As much as there's been consternation about why he threw a ball here, why he ran the ball here, why he was so conservative here, at the end of the day, Arthur Smith knows game management, understands how to keep his team in the game, and they're great situationally, Matt. That's the thing. As bad as they are getting off the field on third downs, critical junctions in the game, they figure out a way to do it.
Is there? No, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, they may end up, the Saints may end up 7 for 12 on first downs, but one of those on third downs rather, but one of those stops may be in the fourth quarter when the Falcons need the ball back. That's just the way it works out.
Yeah. So I don't want to miss that point. Is there pressure from the fan base on Arthur Smith after 1 year?
No, there's no pressure. I think objectively, smart people know that this is, again, a roster devoid of talent for the most part. Other than Grady Jarrett, A.J. Terrell, and right now Drake London, what's really left? You have a very consistent left tackle in Jake Matthews, but other than that, you have no skill position players, and you don't necessarily have an offensive line that can pass block. And that's the other thing why I don't think you'll see Ridder throw a lot. They can't. It's a nosebleed, man. They can't stop anything, that offensive line. Guys are going to get through all night long if they drop back and pass 25 times. It's going to be a recipe for disaster. So they don't really have anybody that can, change the game for them, which is why when the trade deadline came and went, and this was a 500 team, I'm sitting there going, there are players out there that you can get for now and the future that would, make this team a little bit better right now and give them a possible shot at making the playoffs. Why not go do it? But Terry Fontenot passed on it. So, I don't think anybody's pressuring the Falcons to do anything. I think they're more just focused on what the short-term and long-term plan is for next year and beyond.
Man, a pillow fight between the Saints and the Falcons. Who would have thought we'd see this at this point in the year? Hey, before you go, maybe just a thought, how do you see the game going on Sunday to where if Atlanta's going to have success, it sounds like get off the field on third down is what they're going to have to do. But what's that recipe or that formula on Sunday?
Hold the ball for about 32 to 35 minutes in the game, not get the Saints offense on the field. Now, again, the Saints offense with Andy Dalton is kind of gross, right? You guys watch it. It's kind of really ugly, and I still will never understand why Jameis Winston isn't playing quarterback, but that's probably a conversation you guys have had a million times over. Yep. Beyond that, the fact that the Saints offense isn't good is going to keep the Falcons in the game. So Arthur Smith will play keep away. and try to keep the ball on the ground and keep the chains moving that way. I think you'll see a lot of short passes for Ridder. I think you'll see some screens. I think you'll try to get him, especially early on, try to get him getting a few completions, get comfortable on his belt. Arthur Smith's going to take shots down the field. Always has, always will. Go look at his time in Tennessee. Go look at his time here, and he'll tell you. The metrics for, as bad as Mariota was, the metrics for them throwing the ball down the field in air yards, they're one of the better teams in the league at doing it. So he's going to take his shots. They're going to be very calculated, and he's going to make sure he's got a decided advantage over the Saints defense when he does it, and particularly situationally. That's where Arthur Smith is really good. He's one of the best situational coaches I've ever seen. And again, I say all this with a bad subpar roster, which makes it all that more noticeable because he's doing it so well. So I don't know. I don't think the Falcons win this game. I just think the environment and the Saints defense is enough probably to get them a win, as long as Andy Dalton takes care of the football and doesn't turn it over, which, again, is a total crapshoot. Right. That said, if you guys can do that, I think you'll sneak out a field goal plus win.
Mark Zinno on Twitter at MarkZinno929, the game there in Atlanta. We appreciate it, man. Thanks for a couple of minutes.
Anytime, Matty. Stay well.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.